Once upon a time, in a world made of mud and stars, a woman stood between gods and kings. Her name was Enheduanna.
Imagine this. It's 4,300 years ago. The deserts of southern Mesopotamia stretch far beyond the horizon. Wind carries the scent of dry reeds and burning incense. And at the heart of the sacred city of a woman in white climbs the steps of a massive ziggurat. Her footsteps echo off the stone as the sun rises behind her, setting the temple walls aglow with gold. She is not a queen, not a goddess, but she speaks for both. Her name is Enheduanna, and she is about to change history forever. Enheduanna was born the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, the mighty king who united Sumer and Akkad into the first known empire in human history. Sargon's campaigns were ruthless, but his vision was larger than war. He didn't just want to conquer lands, he wanted to hold them. And he knew that to truly rule Sumer, he needed more than soldiers. He needed the gods on his side, so he turned to religion, and for that, he turned to his daughter. Enheduanna, a young noblewoman raised among scribes and priests, was chosen to become the high priestess of Nanna, the moon god of But her real mission was deeper, to unify the spiritual world of Sumer under Akkadian rule. Her appointment wasn't just religious, it was political. She would become the bridge between gods and men, between north and south, between power and poetry. And so, still a young woman, Enheduanna took the most sacred title a woman could hold. Priestess, meaning she belonged not to a man, but to a god. Was no ordinary city. It was the shining jewel of Sumer, with its massive ziggurat rising like a staircase to the heavens. Traders from far lands arrived with lapis lazuli, silver, incense. Scribes etched cuneiform tablets deep into the night. And above them all, in the temple on the highest level of the ziggurat, Enheduanna prayed, wrote, watched. She wore a white linen robe and a silver headband. Her quarters were quiet but never lonely. Servants, scribes, and fellow priestesses came and went. Offerings were prepared. Incense was burned. But when the rituals were over and the temple fell into stillness, Enheduanna did something no one else dared to do. She wrote not just hymns, not just rituals, but poetry, and in every word she left her name, her identity, her truth. She wrote, "The Queen of all powers, she who walks in terrible glory. I, Enheduanna, created this song for you, Inanna." This was the first time in human history that an author signed her name to her work. No longer anonymous, no longer hidden behind a system or a king. Enheduanna stood up and said, "I wrote this." Can you believe that? Most of her hymns were dedicated to Inanna, the goddess of war, love, chaos, and transformation. Inanna wasn't soft. She was fierce, radiant, unpredictable. And so was Enheduanna's writing. She described storms, floods, sexual longing, celestial rage. She portrayed the divine as wild and human, not distant and cold. She used the goddess to explore power, betrayal, emotion, revenge, and hope. But there was more. Between the lines, Enheduanna was also talking about herself, her struggles, her doubts, her pain, her ambition, And soon she would need all of that strength, because peace never lasts in the ancient world, and faith, like power, is always a threat to someone. Far to the north of Ur, a man named Lugal-Ane began rising in influence. He was a Sumerian city-state ruler with no love for Sargon and even less respect for the Akkadian influence that Enheduanna represented. He didn't just want power, he wanted control over the gods themselves. One day, without warning, Lugal-Ane's forces seized the temple. Enheduanna was taken not killed, but stripped of her title, her garments, her sacred duties. She was thrown into exile, likely to a desolate corner of the empire. Some records even suggest she was nearly executed. Just like that, the voice of the gods went silent. But here's the twist. She didn't stay silent. She didn't give in. Imagine if the most powerful spiritual leader in your country, someone chosen by gods and kings alike, was dragged out of her temple, thrown into exile, and told to disappear. What would she do? Most would pray for survival. Enheduanna wrote a poem. In her exile, she composed what would become her most personal and powerful work, The Exaltation of Inanna, a hymn not just to the goddess, but a cry of justice, a confession of trauma, a demand for restoration. She wrote, "They approached me in their fury. They stripped me of my crown. The words of my hymns were turned against me. I, Enheduanna, plead to you, Inanna. Return to me what is mine." Can you feel it? This isn't just worship. This is rebellion, through verse. And what happens next? Well, you won't believe what she did next. We leave Enheduanna now alone, humiliated, grieving. She has lost her home, her temple, her position, but not her voice, not her power, because her words are already traveling across the desert, burning like the sun, unstoppable, and in the silence of exile, the gods are listening. The desert wind scraped across cracked earth. Far from the riverbanks of Ur, Enheduanna sat alone. No crown, no temple, no hymns, just heat, dust, and silence. She lived now in a plain mud brick shelter, exiled from the gods she once served. No guards, no scribes, only the sound of breath and memory. They hadn't killed her. They'd tried to erase her, but a voice written in clay is hard to silence. At night, sleep wouldn't come. She thought of Inanna, wild, radiant, and whispered, "Where are you?" Then one night, beneath the stars, she picked up a stylus and wrote. Not for temple, not for politics, for herself. "I, Enheduanna, was cast out. I plead to speak again." It wasn't a plea. It was a spark. Every line a torch. Every word resistance. From that fire came the exaltation of Inanna, a hymn born of exile, pain, and justice. Inanna had descended into darkness and returned burning. Now Enheduanna did the same. Then something strange happened. Villagers began to whisper. Old scribes came in secret with broken tablets. Women sought her for prayers. Even soldiers started to hesitate. Her voice was spreading. No armies, just clay, ink, and fire. Back in Ur, Lugal-Ane ruled with an iron hand. He had declared himself chosen by the gods, but the city was not convinced. The festivals felt hollow. The moon temple, once alive with music and incense, now stood cold. The people whispered, "Where is the true voice of the gods?" And then, one day, A single clay tablet appeared in the market square. On it were the first lines of Enheduanna's new hymn. It read, "Lady of blazing dominion, clothed in radiance, Inanna, cast your eye upon the lives of men." People gathered, listened, then copied the tablet, again and again. Within weeks, her words were everywhere in schools, temples, homes. Even Lugal-Ain's own scribes could not stop the spread. Sargon, Enheduanna's father, was aging, but his generals remained powerful. When they heard what Lugal-Ane had done to his daughter, the empire's spiritual anchor, they were furious. But they didn't march with weapons. They marched with stories. Scribes rode across the empire reciting Enheduanna's new hymns. In cities from Akkad to Uruk, people demanded her return. This wasn't a rebellion of swords. This was a rebellion of the word. One letter at a time. Lugal-Ane made one fatal mistake. He underestimated memory. The people remembered the voice of Inanna. The priestesses remembered the light, the songs, the silence she filled. And across the empire, voices rose not with swords, but with her words. The pressure broke him. Lugal-Ane stepped down. Enheduanna returned, not as a king's daughter, but as the woman whose words had moved cities. She climbed the ziggurat once more, and from the high temple, looking into the sky, she whispered, "Inanna, justice has returned. The storm has cleared, and I am whole again." And then, something even more surprising. Enheduanna didn't stop. She wrote more, over 40 hymns, one for each great temple in Sumer. She didn't just reclaim her voice, she reshaped faith. She redefined power. Her words became more than prayer, they became law, structure, memory. And, unlike most ancient authors, she signed every piece. "I, Enheduanna, composed this." That name, against all odds, survived. And thousands of years later, we're still saying it. Years passed. Enheduanna remained high priestess, shaping rituals, guiding temples, mentoring priestesses. But more than anything, she kept writing. Her final hymns no longer mourned loss. They celebrated balance, the moon rising steady over Ur. And then she was gone. No one knows how she died. No tomb, no statue, only a name written over and over, "I, Enheduanna." Millennia passed. Empires rose and vanished. Ur crumbled into ruins. Her name was buried under dust until the 1920s. Archaeologists digging near Ur found clay tablets, then more. They didn't know what they had until one name kept returning, "I, Enheduanna," and with it, her voice. Today, her poems live in museums, not on marble, but on clay cracked, faded, alive. She was the first author in human history, not the first woman, not the first priestess, the first. And she didn't write of conquest, she wrote of exile, longing, light, return. She never led an army. She didn't rule a kingdom, but she had a voice. They exiled her, tried to erase her, but her words came back sharper than memory. They took everything, but not my name. What would you have done? Even now, thousands of years later, her legacy reminds us, no matter how far you fall, if you speak, you can rise again. Stories outlast silence. To every woman erased, ignored, or doubted, you don't need a crown, you need courage to speak. I, Enheduanna, composed this. It came from my mouth, it came from my heart, may it be remembered. And it was. So, what does this story really tell us? Speak even if your voice shakes. Write even if no one listens yet. Truth takes time, not permission. Empires fade, words survive.